Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. Today we're tackling one of the biggest crises facing our community, housing. Families are being priced out, the cost of living keeps climbing, and ordinary folks are left wondering how they'll ever afford a place to call home. And while every state bordering Maryland is sitting on budget surpluses, Annapolis has racked up $6 billion in deficits. Instead of easing the burden, our state government is piling on more fees, more taxes, and more policies that drives costs higher and make housing even less affordable. If you've ever felt the squeeze in your paycheck or the frustration of trying to find an affordable home in the Mid-Maryland area, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And we are here to tackle a subject tonight that is near and dear to lots of the viewers in the Mid-Maryland area, the housing crisis in Frederick and Washington County, Maryland. Ethan, what's your take on this housing crisis? People are saying they either can't afford a house or they can't find a house. What is your take?
Well, I think there's truth to both of those comments. I mean, it was just about 3 months ago that one of the county commissioners for Frederick County at a meeting stated that about 1/3 of Frederick County residents can't even pay their behind on their property taxes.
Wow.
Yes. And here in Hagerstown, it has been a recent discussion at the city council.
Well, we're not here in Hagerstown. We're in Frederick because we're at my house.
Hey, if no one in Hagerstown can find a house, guess where some of them are coming?
They're not coming here. They can't afford to live here. This place is expensive, and people from Hagerstown couldn't afford these houses.
And that is something that's happening in Hagerstown as well. It was just a subject at the last city council meeting was the possibility of rent control.
Hagerstown City Council considering rent control. What are we, New York City now?
New York City and pretty much a lot of other failed socialist states around the world.
Are they also going to be electing a socialist mayor sometime soon in Hagerstown?
You never know. I mean, more and more Democrats come out and refer to themselves as socialists on a daily basis. So who knows what's next?
Because socialism works so well, Ethan. You know, in North Korea, Cuba, Russia, Venezuela. They all worked really, really well, didn't it? But this time's going to be different.
That of course is what's always stated. And when you talk to people where more and more they're the champions, in other words, of government programs that keep growing, one thing, that common refrain that you hear from them is, well, the only reason it didn't work in that other place, whether it was another state, whether it was another county, is that they just didn't have the commitment. They didn't commit the money, the time, the resources to make it work. But if we do it, quote, here, wherever here is, it'll work this time with us at the helm.
Recently, at one of your Hagerstown City Council meetings, one of the council members quoted the fact that 50 to 60% of the housing in Hagerstown City is Section 8 or government subsidized housing.
Yes. And
so how does that affect the market?
It makes the market tighter, because what ends up happening is it takes one particular group and it says, all right, everyone from that group artificially, and gives them an incentive to come into Hagerstown. And it's not about that group being good, bad, or otherwise. What it is that when you give an artificial incentive for anything, what that does is that creates a shortage of those resources. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, housing or otherwise. And so what it does is it just creates a lot of people in Hagerstown that, if it wasn't for that extra money coming in from other people's tax dollars, so to speak, those people would not be in Hagerstown to begin with, and there would be more housing per person.
So you're saying that the Section 8 effect on Hagerstown is that it drives up cost and lowers inventory?
Yes. I mean, it's like everything, I mean, it's supply and demand, right? So if you're going to take one particular group and say, hey, everybody from that group, we're going to make it worthwhile for you to leave wherever you've lived your entire life, and we're going to tell you to come here. Well, that means it's going to take up those resources.
Plus, if you notice, if you've ever driven on 70 from Hagerstown down to Frederick and then 270 into Washington, you notice now that it is nonstop traffic. Right. People have moved out to Frederick and especially Washington County now in a search for affordable housing.
Absolutely. And what that is that's people who seem to basically be leaving over the last several years since COVID. They have left Baltimore, they have left DC, they have left Prince George's County,
Montgomery County.
And that's why many people refer to Frederick County as Montgomery County North. That is a common nickname.
Well, that is because these people have migrated out of expensive, overly government regulated areas, and they have brought their voting policies with them.
And that definitely seems to be part of the,
which is absolutely ridiculous. You're fleeing a county or a city because of the cost of living and the inability to live a quality life there. Why replicate those same policies that created that in the very first place?
And so what ends up happening then is that now, we have a spreading problem, so to speak, of this low inventory of housing because, when you take a place like DC or Baltimore where there's just so many people per square mile because of the high density of apartment complexes, etc., and then you send them to anywhere else, then suddenly that there just isn't enough space, so to speak, for that sheer volume of people. It's a numbers game.
There's just no inventory.
Right. And, we can only build so many houses per year, based on the number of construction workers that we have. Right. So it creates a shortage there.
Yeah, Frederick County has the opposite problem. It's not an inventory problem per se. It's a price problem, right? The average median price for a home here in Frederick County is $450,000, which is almost impossible for young couples nowadays.
Right. And of course, that's where you get that statistic where almost a third of Frederick residents are not able to pay their property taxes because they were.
Hold on, say that again. You're saying a third of Frederick County residents are either behind or unable to pay their property taxes.
Yes.
By the way, those property taxes are going up.
Oh, significantly. And that of course is even yet another issue simply related to the tax increases that are occurring at the state level, having of course nothing to do with the availability of property. That's just taxes in general going up. So yeah, so you
should try to meet the $6.2 billion deficit that the Maryland state government is going through right now.
Right, with the largest tax increases and fee increases,
which have all gone up across the board. Everything from registering your car to your your tags, your emissions, all of that stuff going through the roof.
Every single person now has to pay a dramatic increase in sales taxes, fees for essentially everything. Essentially almost everything that can be taxed or feed has seen some kind of an increase, and we are going to have yet another, it's already projected, $3 billion deficit this coming January, the same as we did last January. And so there's going to have to be an equivalent amount of tax and fee increases, right? And so we're seeing it right now occurring with more and more people not being able to afford their property taxes or a place to live. And then that just trickles down to everything else, such as possibly vehicles someday, right? I will mention one other thing. It appears, according to the head of Baltimore Gas and Electric, which is the utility company for Baltimore County.
BG&E.
Yep, BG&E. That they stated that 18% of their customers are not able to pay their utility bills. So there is definitely a cascading effect. Yeah. Housing is, for obvious reasons, kind of the most talked about.
It's most obvious. When people don't have a place to live, that's their number one priority is get shelter, right?
Yes.
And then followed by food and all the other things that you need. But the first thing you got to do is pay the rent.
That's right.
And another thing that we haven't talked about is the people on fixed incomes, right? The poor, the elderly, people on fixed incomes are being devastated by these fee increases by Maryland state government. Yeah. And the counties are right behind them. Frederick County is also raising fees, right? Meanwhile, the states around us have surpluses. Well, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, even Delaware, they have surpluses in their budgets. Well, Maryland, we are now the fifth most expensive state to live in the United States of America, and we're well on our way to being number one.
Yes, and as we move up the rankings of being the most expensive state to live in, we are dropping in the rankings of our income. The average income in Maryland is going down. One of the only states in the country that's happening, and yet our cost of living is increasing. And when it comes to surrounding states, not only are they having none of these problems, but West Virginia actually lowered their taxes. I mean, so it's such a stark contrast. Now, one thing in regards to the shortage of housing is that it's not all a result of bad governance. I mean, there is an issue that if you go back to shortly after World War II, there was an initiative that was done nationally.
Oh, now we're talking about the boomers.
Now we are talking about
those dreaded boomers.
That's right. It definitely seems to have become a trendy thing to blame the baby boomer.
Oh my gosh, you talk to the teenagers nowadays, they're like, "Oh, you boomers ruined everything for us. You won't die and leave us the property and the money."
Something about all of that just doesn't quite make sense.
The funniest part is that what they don't include is the fact that most of us boomers, and I'm on the edge of the baby boomers, we worked 3 jobs to afford what we got. 3, 4, whatever it took, we worked to try to provide, the homes and the resources that we now have.
Yes.
They don't figure that out. They want to work a 34-hour week, go home and play video games or whatever it is that these teenagers are doing nowadays. And blame, of course, the boomers for all of their problems.
The older generation is not responsible for the challenges of the younger generation.
No, the younger generation just wants us to die and leave the resources for them. That's what but hey, joke's on them. Life expectancy is up to 85 now. We're going to be around for a lot longer, you little cretins. Hey, by the way, both counties face an interesting shortage. Both Frederick for price reasons and Washington County for theirs. Both of them are facing a shortage of what they call workforce housing, right? Affordable options for regular working class people, because the wealthy have it and the people who don't are subsidized by the government. But the people who actually work hard, teachers, correctional officers, service workers, all of them, they don't qualify for low-income housing subsidies, but they can't afford what's in the market right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're doubly screwed.
Well, they can't afford what's in the market here in Frederick and Washington County, but what they can do is they can drive across the border just a few miles into West Virginia, where housing is going up left and right. Mm-hmm. And that
Pennsylvania too. They go up to Greencastle and that area up there. Those Mechanicsburg, those areas are booming as well.
And that's where they're finding affordable housing, which of course just kind of brings us back to the fact that it's a supply and demand issue. So the question is, why is there not more supply in this area? Now, we just touched upon an important part of it is that the expenses related to housing in Maryland are so high simply because of taxes and fees that it's really getting almost impossible for Maryland to be competitive with housing prices. And that's true of all costs, unfortunately. And like I said, it's going to continue next year and the year after and the year after as these record deficits and spending and tax increases, and building up. And over time, those urban centers have started to get built out. And so there actually is an element here, a dynamic that isn't related necessarily to all these other issues we're talking about. And because these other areas outside of these urban areas haven't really allowed the high density housing, the urban housing.
No, it's a big push in Frederick County.
Yeah.
Frederick County wants to very much limit the high density housing that would make it more affordable, but of course be a blight on society. We're talking piggyback townhouses, condominiums, that kind of stuff.
Well, and it's not just that it's an eyesore, the old NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. It's not just that it's that. But when you look at the politics and how the quality of life has changed when a place becomes a city, right? What is the quality of life there?
Some of them are good. I mean, Frederick City has got a great quality of life. Frederick City was so good that it got on the top 10 hidden gems of the United States a few years ago. I think it was in like Atlantic Magazine or something.
Yeah, we're ranked number 8 in the country.
Right. And so it was like the hidden gems, and then everybody started coming into it and drove all the prices up.
Yeah, but what I'm referring to specifically is kind of going back 80 years to what has happened to New York City, what has happened to Chicago, LA, Baltimore, DC.
Right.
And what you see is that life has gotten scary in those areas. I mean,
The same thing is true of Hagerstown.
Yeah.
I mean, Hagerstown, a lot of their infrastructure is 80, 90, 100 years old. A lot of the stock of housing is 80, 90, 100 years old. So not only is Washington County facing higher rents because of Section 8, but Hagerstown itself has an aging stock of homes that, that are old. I mean, a lot of those World War II ranchers and ramblers, man, I mean, who's going to pay $500,000 for a rancher in downtown Hagerstown? And that's what the prices are right now.
and you make a great point, because in Washington County, the pipes that deal with bringing water from the Potomac River to Hagerstown are 150-year-old clay pipes, and they all have to be replaced. And I believe the price tag on that is $300 million. So yeah, they're
where is Hagerstown City going to get $300 million?
Right. Exactly.
There's not enough money in the budgets of any municipality to do that. Heck, one of the major cities would have a hard time replacing that stuff.
Right. And part of the answer is that in Hagerstown, probably there needs to be some more high-rise apartment buildings. Well, then that means that you have to build it, right? You have to build it just like we did.
Well, that's another interesting point you're making, because Frederick County is going after the developers and requiring them, or there's talk about requiring them to set aside part of their developments for affordable living,
Yeah. And
i.e. subsidized housing.
other municipalities have done that. Something that has been done in other places. And the thing is that, just to give a concept of how, in a sense, how easy this is to deal with, if we gave every American a quarter of an acre to live in, right? And a house on a quarter of an acre, you could fit the entire country in like Florida and Georgia and some of Alabama, right?
The problem is nobody wants to live in Georgia, Alabama, and Florida.
Hey, I graduated from Florida.
Humidity. People from New York.
There's a reason I haven't moved back down there at all this year.
Dude, I went down to southern Florida. A buddy of mine wanted me to go down there and maybe think about living there. And I said, when did you import all the people from New York City? Because they're obnoxious.
It's been that way for decades. Since the 80s. I actually refer to South Florida as the 6th borough, right? New York City.
But only on the East Coast.
Yeah.
On the West Coast, you get all the nice people from the Midwest, like Sarasota and Port Charlotte, and Tampa. They all go down on the West Coast of Florida.
Yeah, there's
East Coast, you might as well be in the Bronx.
Yeah, the two populations can't relate to each other. That's why there's so little, crossing.
Funny you say that, because I told my buddy in Southern Florida, which he's on the East Coast. I said I was thinking about Sarasota. He goes, "Who wants to live out there?" I'm like, me? I will say this: in Sarasota or in Boca Raton, which is where he lives, you can get a really good bagel. There's a Jewish deli on every corner, man. I mean, the food's pretty good in Boca.
The best. And you know what makes the Jewish bagel so good in New York City? It's the water.
Is it the water?
Yeah, they will export the water from New York City to various places.
They're exporting the water down to the Boca Raton bagel shop.
I 100% guarantee it.
Well, I can tell you this: whatever they're doing, they are delicious.
You can't find it anywhere else.
Lox, bagels, By the way, who are the only two people in this world who really know how to cook brisket well? Who are they?
I'm going to assume that one is the Jewish community.
That's correct. The other one is Texans. Texans and Jews. And if you have a Jewish Texan, oh my gosh, they're a brisket champion.
Absolutely.
But anyway, back to the affordable housing in this area, right? What are we looking at? We're looking at a serious issue that's going to it can only go worse. Prices in this area are going through the roof. Your average working class people in Frederick County can't afford it anymore. They don't want to go to Washington County. They're getting out of the state. I mean, people are leaving the state, as you said earlier, in droves. So, what is the solution here? Because, the cost of living across the state is going up.
Mhm. And it doesn't have to get worse, right? All it really is a function of is we have to create an environment where people do want to live and invest in, right? And so the reason that there's so much housing, and it is mostly high density housing going up in the panhandle of West Virginia, and there is actually quite a bit going up in Frederick County as well. And same, like you mentioned, with the Pennsylvania that borders us there. But when you look at it, what is the crime rate in those areas compared to what we're talking about with Hagerstown? Washington County has one of the lowest crime rates in the state, right?
If you take out Hagerstown, it's definitely one of the
I'm sorry, I meant Frederick County. Frederick County has one of the lowest crime rates in the state.
Yeah, they're doing very well.
And so what happens is when someone is like, well, there's so much crime in DC or Baltimore, we want to get away. And that's one of the reasons they're leaving. They're not going to move to Hagerstown, where the crime rate is very similar on a per capita basis. What they're going to do is they are going to move to one of these other places, and they're going to invest the money, and you're going to end up with a lot of construction. And that could also happen to Hagerstown. But we have to create an environment where people feel safe coming to Hagerstown. And that's an issue that has obviously been ongoing. And we've talked about previously on this podcast.
Oh, yeah. Many times we've talked about the crime issues in Hagerstown, and they are legendary.
Yes, and I do believe that the new city council, which in particular has two particular people who are very much want to deal with the crime issue.
Call them out. Who is it?
Well, the mayor, Bill McIntyre,
Okay.
and also Councilman Sean Flaherty.
I feel that Councilman Christian Alshire is also on track to try to get the crime issue under control.
Absolutely, and the thing is everyone wants to. I mean, all of the city council members, all six of them, want to. But what it is
Differ on how they want to approach it.
Yes, some ideas are common sense and other ideas are not. Some things are difficult, and you really have to hash out the differences, know what the best course is. But there's some issues where it really is common sense versus a lack of common sense.
I think the two camps of this, okay? People want social programs to address crime. People want policing, active policing to fight the crime rates. Some people want both, right? And I do believe we need both. You need to find both solutions.
Yes.
Just over policing and underserving your community, that's not going to get the crime rate down.
Right.
Policing it aggressively and providing social escapes for people who are, are in that particular cycle. I think that's the two-prong approach that works in most areas that I've seen.
Agreed, and obviously it can be done, right? Because as we just said a minute ago, you have Frederick County, which is doing it, has been doing it for extended periods of time,
and that two-prong approach seems to be working.
Agreed. And so if we can get Hagerstown to the point where it is doing the same thing and providing the same benefits and reality for its citizens as is happening in Frederick County and Frederick City, and then we can fully expect that the investment will come into Hagerstown that will fix the housing problem. But obviously the groundwork has to be laid first.
Right. Frederick County, we've talked about it several times. They're actually considering inclusionary zones where developers have to bring in affordable units, i.e. Section 8 and other type subsidized programs, right? Also, accessory dwelling units, ADUs, which are, they allow the nonprofits to create this transitional housing, right? Basically trailers and mini homes and that kind of stuff. Because right now, both of those policies are prohibited under Frederick County. But the bottom line is that's going to change the landscape of Frederick County. In Washington County, they're focused on rehabilitating older houses, right? The stock has to be rehabilitated and brought up to stuff. So, two different counties, two different approaches. Which one wins?
Right. And I think that there's more than even two ways to do it, right? So, but when you look at the nonprofits that are having success at bringing people who were homeless, people who were drug addicts, people who were recently out of prison for years, and that are successfully bringing them back into the community. And you look at the steps that they're taking. That transitional housing is a big part of it. There does need to be a multi-pronged approach. And probably, so for one community, there's maybe 3 different steps to it. In another community, there may be 3 steps as well, but one of the steps is different from the other community, right? But there does definitely seem to be some commonalities that are working across the entire country, and transitional housing is a big part of it.
Here's another commonality, Ethan, that we need to talk about. People need to get involved. Everybody wants to get involved in the presidential elections, the big elections. But the truth is, your quality of life as a resident here in the Mid-Maryland area is way more impacted about who your mayor is, your town council is, your city council, your school boards. Yes. Way more impacted on a day-to-day basis. Some of these initiatives that are going to be sweeping Frederick and Washington County, absolutely people need to get on board with, get on the ground level with, because once they're passed, it's going to be hard to repeal any of that stuff. And it will absolutely affect the bottom line and the wallet of Frederick and Washington County voters.
Being aware and educated and active in local voting and know who you're voting for, right, absolutely is the most important. Far more important than voting for the right person to be president, I would say. And because you are dealing with local issues, those are all issues that we all understand. I mean, how many people can really say, I can't, that they really understand what's going on with the Ukraine or the details, the thousands of details related to tariffs?
Ethan, we've done 2 shows on Ukraine and the tariffs. You were basically saying we didn't know what the heck we were talking about. But to Ethan's point, look, it's much, much more important for our audience, for the people who watch our podcast, to get involved in your local politics. Frederick County, Washington County, Hagerstown City, Frederick City. These policies that these part-time politicians are approving and putting into effect are going to affect the quality of life of everybody in our listening audience way more than President Trump or any other president or Congress is going to do.
100%.
Hey, that's it for this episode of Mid-Maryland Votes. I'm your host, Mark Flynn. With me, as always, is my friend and co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And it's been our pleasure to talk to you. If you like what you've seen, like, share, and follow, and send it to a friend of yours or an enemy. We don't really care. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Mid-Maryland Votes. The housing crisis isn't just numbers, it's families and neighbors pushed to the breaking point while Annapolis piles on more taxes and fees. Every surrounding state runs a surplus, but Maryland sinks deeper into debt, leaving the Mid-Maryland area to pay the price. We'll keep asking the hard questions and bringing you the stories that matter most. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to like, follow, and share for more content like this. And we'll see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes.